Well, time is marching on, so let's switch to defense. Thoughts on Mike Tressel? So just quickly, Tressel, defense coordinator, Mike Tressel played at Cornell before coming up through small schools. Then he landed at Ohio State as a GA under his dad, then Buckeye head coach, the legendary Jim Tressel. After that, he was extremely successful at Michigan State with Mark D'Antonio until things fell apart sort of at the end.
Yep.
Then Tressel went with Fickell to Cincinnati and Wisconsin. Last fall, Wisconsin was 60th nationally in yards per play allowed, and they actually regressed a little bit as the season went along. They gave up 165 yards rushing last year per game, which is the worst of any Badger squad since 2005. I got to ask your thoughts on Mike Tressel, and I'm going to be honest, like for me, the biggest mistake Wisconsin made, and I've said this a bunch of times, wasn't trying to change the offense. It was changing the defense, because that 3-4 they had rolling was just unstoppable. And I guess Jim Leonard probably wasn't going to stay to be DC, but I did think it was strange that Luke Fickell didn't continue that scheme as effective as it was, and then he decided to change to a 4-man front.
Yeah, that kind of goes with stuff that we talked about at the beginning, is Luke Fickell kind of coming in here and wanting to change a lot of things. See, we trying to change things offensively. We know that didn't work. Defensively, I think it's been a little bit of a mixed bag so far, to be very honest with you. How do you feel about Mike Tressel? It's up and down. It's like you see last year, for example, like a great defensive performance against one of the most efficient offenses in the country in the Oregon Ducks late in the season. Oregon was coming off 8 consecutive games. I think Tez Johnson was out for that game, their leading receiver. There's all of that, but still, like, they are who they are.
It was undefeated Oregon. And you had them. Right,
they were the number one team in the country, and they played. They made it into a old school Big Ten West type of rock fight. In that type of game, and that was a really good defense. I thought Penn State. I thought the defense played well for some of the game, certainly against them. They were in it. They were in it there in the first half until the Nittany Lions started to pull away. Certainly towards the end, they're there, but then you see other performances against, look what Nebraska did late in the season. That was, I think, Dana Holgerson's first full week as the offensive coordinator for the Huskers, and you see them be very successful over the top. I think a big thing for Wisconsin is they've taken a pretty big step back when it comes to the pass rush. And I thought they had some decent transfer pass rushers last season, but they didn't really pan out. They didn't. And I think I've made this comparison a lot as referencing the entire team, but it's the hamster wheel. It just keeps going around and around and around, and they can't gain any traction. They can't get their feet down and walk forward. And that's kind of the way it seems. The big deal for the Badgers last year, James Thompson Jr. goes down before the season starts. He was really slated to be one of the better pass rushers, one of the better guys up front of the defensive line. He goes down, and the defensive line was maybe the weakness of the football team last season. Yeah. And this year, they brought in a whole bunch of transfers. And what do we know about transfers? Half of them work out and are really good. Hopefully, sometimes it's less, sometimes it's more. So that's a big question, I think, going forward for this team. In many ways, this is a make or break year for Wisconsin in a lot of ways. And I think we're really going to see, and I think it might be a little bit of a make or break year for Tressel and what this defensive team because this is supposed to be Fickell's a defensive guy, right? He was a nose tackle at Ohio State.
Right.
Mike Tressel had success. You mentioned it at Michigan State. You mentioned it at Cincinnati, right? They coached Sauce Gardner over there with the Bearcats. So, this is where it all is supposed to be. But I look at this defense, and there are certainly some places where you could see some positivity certainly pop up. But, man, it's tough. It's tough. So
I know we don't have much time, but let's just briefly talk each position group. D-line, they bring back senior Ben Barton. That's a good start. UT Martin transfer Charles Perkins is getting rave reviews out of Madison from what I've heard. And there appears to be better depth on the D-line this year. And along with that, linebackers, you've got Christian Allegro, Tackett Curtis, Corey Walker, all appear slated to start. So I feel like the D-line seems like it's going to be pretty good. I'm having a hard time trying to figure out what to expect from the linebackers. So
Yeah,
front seven, what are you thinking?
Yeah, like you mentioned, the key, I think, that you got to get better defensive line performance out of this team this season. Ben Barton in there at 6'5", 323. Like he's going to be, considering that he's the guy that's coming back, he's got to be the leader, certainly up front on these defensive line. Those guys that you mentioned, if you get like two that really hit, I think now you're really working with something at Wisconsin. You go to the linebacking core. Kristen Allegro, I think, towards the end of last season, really started to come on and really started to look a lot better in that group. Watch out for Sebastian Cheeks as well. He was a North Carolina transfer. I believe he came in at the beginning of last season. He's maybe someone that really started to come into his own a little bit towards the end of last season as well. Tackett Curtis, like he was a 4-star guy, came out of high school at USC, played 1 year there. And like last year, it was kind of hit or miss. So I'm very curious to see if he can maybe get back on the right track, certainly this year. But man, you look at, this is just, it's such an adjustment that we've talked about during this whole show. Like Leo Chanel ain't walking through that door. Nick Herbig ain't walking through that door. It's tough.
Was it Leo Chanel who caught Bucky Irving from behind? I think it was.
Yeah.
And I remember being like, you've got to be kidding me.
Yeah. So you've got to kind of adjust these expectations. I think there's better. I think there's some, even despite losing Wohler, I think there's some good stuff in the secondary with Preston Zachman coming back at safety, Hallman and Forkerine over at corners. I think that's like Hallman's a very good corner. He had like 5 or 6 interceptions a couple of years back. Like Forkerine, I think, because of the junior college exemptions with Diego Pavia, I think he kind of started at Vanderbilt. That allowed him to come back. Austin Brown is another guy at the nickel spot that I think really has played pretty well over these last couple of years. Like, I think there's some good starting talent in the secondary. We'll see what the depth certainly looks like. I think overall, like this year for Fickell and Tressel, can you develop these guys? Can you bring it all together? I think this is really going to tell us in year 3 just how good that these guys are doing defensively with the Badgers.
Yeah, and I saved the DBs for last because it looks so strong.
Yeah.
You've got a lot of experience. You've got upperclassmen. I'm glad you said Forkerine, so I didn't have to try to say it first because I was a little worried about it. Yeah. But yeah, and Ricardo Hallman is a very legit, you need that top cornerback with some swag, and I feel like he's that guy. So, yeah, you've got a really nice secondary, and it seems like that's going to be a group you lean on this year.
I like the secondary. That I think it does say a lot, despite losing somebody like Wohler, to still have that strong of a secondary.
And Xavier Lucas.
Thank you, Xavier Lucas. I try to forget about that whole situation. But yeah, that's it's a good. I think the key to really maximize this group, which they didn't really have these last couple of years, you need a better pass rush, right?
Yep.
The pass rush and coverage really go hand in hand. You got good coverage, allows more time to get the pass rush to get there. Pass rush gets there quicker, not as much time for the DBs to be able to cover, and not as much pressure certainly on them as well. So that's a combination that goes hand in hand. I think the DBs are maybe holding up their end of the bargain with talent-wise. Pass rush is something that really needs to get there more.
Okay.
Awesome.